Welcome to Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, this is the 2023 Acura Integra, and we need to talk. I have driven a lot of cars in 2022. I have talked about a lot of cars on our social media channels with a bunch of you, and I don't think there has been any one vehicle so divisive and controversial and chatter generating as this Integra has been. I want to talk about why, because I think a lot of where people are coming from has some good intentions, some enthusiast backgrounds, and I kind of think that it's a little misguided. So let's talk about what the 2023 Integra is, talk about its heritage a little bit and what it isn't and kind of has never been, and then we'll get it out on the road and see how it is to drive. So first of all, let's talk about what this car is. Acura has reintroduced the Integra nameplate for 2023 with this car. Now, we lost the Integra nameplate, honestly, a long time ago, back after 2001. They retired it in the United States for the RSX and then the ILX. The RSX was that two-door coupe, and then the ILX was a four-door sedan that was, again, based off of the Civic Si. It was a great way to buy a Civic Si with a little bit of extra equipment that was a little bit nicer and just as fun to drive. When Acura announced they were bringing this model name back, and they said we're getting rid of the ILX, we're coming up with a new model, and we're calling it Integra again, a lot of fan renders came out on the internet, and everyone was all excited for it to be basically a modern version of the DC2 Integra Type-R. And everyone thought it was going to be a two-door painted bright yellow with a big wing, and maybe they'd even get the quad, four eyes look on the front, and it's going to be some bonkers engine. And then they released this, and a lot of people were pretty irritated. And I'm not one of them. Acura, when they first came to the States, they were a brand new brand, and they introduced two cars. They had the Legend, which was at the very top of the tier, and that was their premier flagship vehicle that has been around for a couple generations and later became the RL and RLX. The other way to buy an Acura back then was to buy an Integra. Now, Acura put a lot of their money and R&D resources into building the Legend, so they said, all right, how do we make an Integra? How do we make a second car for this brand new brand that is easier for us to build, less costly for us to build? Let's start with a Honda Civic and do what we can to make it visually different, a little more fun to drive, a little more, full of features and content and whatever else. And that's going to be the Integra. And I hate to break it to all of you, but that's what the Integra has always been. I know we all think of the DC2, especially a DC2 Integra Type-R, as the Integra. It's the one that's on the walls, from our childhood bedrooms. It's the one that was, leading all the magazine comparisons. It's the one that, if you come watch a NASA Honda Challenge race, those are the Integras people built off of, by and large. They were not always like that. If you look at every generation of Integra, they have also looked like this, and like this, and like this, and like this, even with the RSX, which was called an Integra in other parts of the world. So when Acura said, we're doing a 5th gen Integra, we're calling the Integra an Integra again, and it's going to be a Honda Civic Si that looks a little different and offers some different feature content, I personally was like, sweet. I think this looks fantastic. Personally, I happen to like the looks of it a little better than a Civic Si. I appreciate all the extra feature content, which we'll talk about in the interior tour in just a minute. And I think it drives really well. We'll talk about that on the drive. So I'm not mad about this at all. I think it is a pretty good car for the money. And what's interesting is where Acura actually puts this with a set of competitors. So all of us, of course, just want this to be a modern DC2, and fine. But Acura is being a little more realistic because, unfortunately, no one is buying two-door coupes. Honda stopped selling the two-door Civic with the introduction of this 11th gen Civic platform that is the basis for the Integra. And people just aren't buying them. Everyone's buying blobs. Everyone's buying a gray blob because crossovers are the perfect one-car solution for a lot of people. When it's tough to even get the market share and the business case to build a new, sedan or sports car or sports sedan or whatever you want to call it, this is what they're doing because this is what they can make the business case for, because coupes don't sell right now. Sorry, if you wanted coupes to keep selling, you needed to buy one and keep buying them every couple of years, brand new, to keep the sales numbers up, to make everyone think that we need to make more of them. That's the unfortunate reality, even if that's not something that most of us could afford to do. So with that, we have this Integra. It is a four-door, it is a hatchback or a liftback, if you will. I'll show you that in just a second. But Acura says that this car, as it sits, compares to 3 different makes and models. They say it compares to the Audi A3, they say it compares to the BMW 228i Gran Coupe, and it compares to the Mercedes-Benz CLA 250. Now, I would throw one more oddball into the mix because it's from a brand that historically punches up a little bit. Even though it is not a luxury brand, I would also throw in the Volkswagen Jetta GLI. It's a little bit of an oddball, but it is a front-wheel drive, 6-speed manual, turbo 4 compact sedan that is ultimately a fairly nice place to spend time with plenty of options and feature content and a generally sporty bent. So I'm keeping that one in mind as well, but by and large, Acura is comparing this to other entry-level luxury compact sedans. Love that. So let's talk about what is powering this thing, and that is the same drivetrain as the new Civic Si. So where the Civic Si is built off of Honda's Civic sedan platform, to find the hood opening, this is built off of the Civic hatchback. But this is how you can buy effectively a Civic hatchback with an Si drivetrain, which is to say a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 200 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. The more basic trim levels of Integra get a standard CVT, continuously variable automatic transmission. On this trim level, which is the fully loaded A-Spec with technology package, you can have a CVT or a 6-speed manual transmission with no cost difference. If you get the 6-speed manual, you also get a standard limited slip differential, which, love that, helps put power down to both wheels, not just one wheel. The only other real mechanical difference going on with the Integra versus the Civic Si, well, there's 2 really. The biggest one is adaptive dampers. So when you get this A-Spec with technology pack, you get adaptive suspension. So you've got 3 different suspension settings for how firm or soft your suspension rides. That's a really nice thing to have. The other thing that's slightly tweaked versus the Civic Si is the steering ratio. I found it while combing through spec sheets. It doesn't make any difference in steering feel, not necessarily, but that is another physical difference. Your brakes are going to be the same as what you get on the Civic Si. They're upsized over a regular Civic, and you get the bigger brakes no matter which trim level of Integra you choose. So same for the engine. You're not punished for getting a lower trim or a higher trim. It's all the same drivetrain. The only difference is the 6-speed and the limited slip if you get the A-Spec with tech. Now, a lot of the differences between the Integra and the Civic Si that it is based off of, I know Acura's just sitting there probably hating the fact that I keep saying the word Civic talking about the Integra. A lot of the differences are with feature content and in the interior. So let's take a quick interior tour and then get it on the road and see how it is to drive. All right, now we're gonna start the tour of this car with the rear because, like I said, this is a hatchback where the Civic Si is a sedan. Now, I say hatchback, it's really technically considered more of a liftback just because of the general body shape. This is not a power hatch, but no big deal. It's got 2 big struts. This is a fairly large hatch opening. It's a little more than 24 cubic feet of space, and you can see it's a nice deep floor going on in here. So plenty of room for your things. The back seats do fold down, so you get a bigger load floor. There is no spare tire under this floor here. It's just a mobility kit going on. You'll see the nice big subwoofer for the ELS Studio 3D sound system, which we'll talk about in just a second. But nice to have this as a hatchback. I just think it adds a lot more practicality versus having a sedan. Now let's move on to the front seats of the Integra. So in this case, paired to the white, I have this lovely red. These are a mix of fake leather and micro suede, so kind of a nice two-tone, two-material sort of thing going on here. You can get red with certain paint colors, or they come in just a basic black. I love the red, and I wish you could get it with all of the paint colors because it's just so interesting and different. Now, looking further over here, if you have looked at the Civic Si, this will look a little familiar to you, but it's still different. So you've got the same sort of dash vents in style to the Civic, but it's a little different in that they don't run all the way across the dashboard. You have the same infotainment system here, which we'll show you booted up in just a second. And looking further down, you have dual zone climate control with heated seats. Again, something you cannot get with the Civic Si. You have a wireless charging mat. You've got 2 USB ports there for USB-A and USB-C. You've got your lovely 6-speed manual transmission. Right here are your drive mode controls for your individual drive mode that you can set, and then your presets, your auto start-stop button to turn it off, which you should always do, your electronic parking brake, and then the brake hold feature. So pretty standard center console over here compared to the Civic Si with a couple different tweaks. Let me hop in and show you more of what's going on here. You've got the same steering wheel that you get in the Civic Si with an Acura badge on the airbag cover, which is to say it's really nice. It's got nice hard buttons all over here for your media controls, and then over here all for your adaptive cruise control and other driver assistance bits. And thankfully they do offer all this with a 6-speed manual. Some people in the auto space do not. They have somehow not figured out how to incorporate all of that together. And I'm gonna shut the door. You'll notice this is a full gauge cluster that is all digital, unlike the Civic Si, which is partially digital. So if I go ahead and hit the start button, fully digital screen. And then as we look over here, as the screen boots up, we can see if I turn the climate control on, you've got that dual zone. It lights up the heated seat buttons. And this mentions ELS Premium Audio, which is one of the biggest reasons to get an Integra over the Civic Si. The sound system in this car, as you can see, is branded here. It is a 16-speaker system with something like 580 watts. It's got these speakers up here in the roof, and it is really a fantastic sound system. It is a nice upgrade over Bose. I think the Bose in the Civic Si is plenty fine, and this is definitely the one to have for the audio enthusiasts among us. Now you can see we're connected here to Apple CarPlay. It is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can, of course, plug in if you would like to for a little bit higher quality sound, if you're one of those people like me who listens to lossless audio whenever they can. So this is wireless, super normal for what you're going to get. I do like that you've got the dedicated physical home button here that takes you to the Acura system if you need it for anything. So this system, it's very basic looking. It's really easy to deal with though. So I really like that as far as, messing with vehicle settings or the sound settings or anything like that. This is super simple. It's pretty snappy, and I really appreciate that. Back to CarPlay over there. And then you can see the fully digital cluster over here that's got both your tach and your speedometer with some more information in them. And you can configure what displays over here, so I can change whatever's going on here if I really want to. Well, maybe I can't. And you can configure the gauge cluster. I've just kind of got it in a way that I like right there. Looking back over on the driver's door panel, we have 2-position memory for the seats. This is a power driver's seat and a power passenger seat. A little more adjustability on the driver's side, but nice to have them both powered. And you've got your mirror controls and standard, door locks and windows. Like I said, again, the ELS Studio is one of the biggest reasons to get this this car versus the Civic Si if you care about sound. The other thing, which you can kind of see out here, is a heads-up display. That's another piece that's not offered on the Civic Si in the United States, and again, a nice-to-have feature. Looking back up on the roof here, nothing too crazy. You've got a sunglass holder and your controls for the sunroof and your dome lights. Sunroof is right there. And then looking in the back seat, these back seats are not huge, although Acura says it is the most rear legroom of its class. So take that for what you will. None of these cars in this class are going to be remarkably large. So just something to keep in mind. So with all that, let's hang this camera on the windshield and talk about how the 2023 Integra is as a car for people who like to drive. All right, so driving the 2023 Acura Integra with 6-speed. As you can tell, I think the drivetrain is great. It is, it's an easy clutch, and the engine is, I think plenty of power, which I don't think everyone agrees with me on that front, but it's plenty of power. The shifter is great, the clutch is great. It's a huge improvement over what the old Civic Si was, the prior gen, 10th gen car. This is just such a better drivetrain, and I think it's totally fine for the Integra as it is. The interesting thing is that the Integra weighs more than the Civic Si. So that's, I think, partially because of this being a different body type with a different design. So not only do you have a as the liftback versus the sedan, it's also a longer body. It's like 7 inches longer than a Civic liftback. So that all adds some weight, and then of course you've got more feature content going on here that also contributes to the weight. So it's 150, 200 pounds heavier than the Civic Si, which means it's a touch slower everywhere, but it also is, a nicer place to spend time, and I really like the way this vibe is more than the Civic Si because I value those sorts of things. I really especially value the sound system. I know I talked about it already, but it really is that much of a big deal. Now, with weight and with power, Acura, of course, sent me this whole PowerPoint presentation that included comparisons to all of these vehicles that they say are direct competitors to this car, the Audi A3, the 228i Gran Coupe, and the Mercedes-Benz CLA. And in all these cases, the interesting thing, this car makes, competitive enough horsepower, but despite weighing a little more than the Civic Si, this is also lighter than those three cars by like almost 300 pounds in every case. So power to weight ratio, which is what actually matters, not outright horsepower, power to weight ratio is what actually matters here, and this car has the best ratio of the four. Now, all that to say, I thought the Civic Si felt a little more sprightly compared to this. I don't think either of them feels slow. This power to weight ratio is right around 15 pounds per horsepower, which is not super duper fast. It's also not super duper slow. It will feel plenty quick all of the time unless you're going for a highway passing full throttle maneuver where you're just only going to get more if you have like a 400 horsepower car. Otherwise, normally, this is highway speed, pulling out, accelerating sort of deal. It's all fine. One of the other things I love about this car is that the pedals are set for proper, perfect, easy heel-toe downshifting. You can just nice and easy do it. And they do have automatic rev matching. They pulled technology from the outgoing Civic Type-R to do that, and I don't care. I turn it off. You can turn it off in the touchscreen when you're stopped, and it's so easy to just blip the throttle. Really, really love that. I think the steering is fine. I think the brakes are fine. Everything about it is just so well done. The feeling you get, it's that intangibleness. That's what I like about the Integra. The Civic gave it to me to a point, and I think I get it more here because I think the interior is more special. I like the body style better. I think it's more practical, more interesting, and I frankly like the styling better. I think that goes a long way. Now, a couple more things here. First of all, suspension. You've got a couple different suspension options that are part of your dynamic mode settings, your drive modes. I drive the car in sport mode everywhere because I actually think it's really well set up. It's firm without being obnoxious or crashy or harsh. I like it on the highway. I like it on back roads and everything else. And in the city, I have taken to doing the individual mode because I want everything else still in sport, but the suspension in comfort. And in comfort, it's not wallowy. It's still very well composed, but it's way soft compared to sport. And it's really nice if you're driving on bad roads, as a lot of city environments can be. So really think the suspension is set up nicely, and that ties in to the limited slip differential on the front end and the steering. So the steering, of course, gets heavier and lighter based on your drive modes, but feel overall I think is pretty good. It's not something that I notice a huge difference with between drive modes, but I like it. I think it feels good. It's predictable. It's easy. You know where the front wheels are. It's good. It's really good for what it is. And then the limited slip diff, I know it's only on the manual cars, so not every Integra will have it. If you get the CVT, you're going to have an open diff, but the limited slip with the 6-speed makes such a big difference. You don't feel the car torque steering really, but you feel the diff doing some work in the steering wheel. If you put your foot down, muscling your way out of a corner or something like that, it does a really, really nice job. And I'm so glad that they chose to do that instead of, some brake-based system that pretends to be a limited slip and just chews up your brake pads. Now, I do think the one thing with this car, I just feel like there's a little bit of an opportunity to do more with it. And I mean that in the sense of, this is really fun. I really, really like this car. I don't think I can state that enough. I loved the Civic Si when I drove that about a month before driving this car. I would probably choose the Integra because the upgrades that you get over the Civic Si are worth it to me. I think it is totally worth the extra money. I also think if you don't want to spend the extra money, they're using a really good starting point to build this car. So do with that what you will, but Honda also just announced the upcoming Civic Type-R. They showed it to a few members of the press, and we don't really know specs on that car yet, but it of course makes me think that there will be a new Civic Type-R and probably some sort of Integra Type S, Type-R, whatever they would call it, that will be a little more wild than this car. So if you think that you really want, the modern DC2 Integra, something tells me they're going to do something that will be a little closer to what all of you who are complaining will be happy with. And in the meantime, if you're not one of those people, this is a fabulous car. I really, really like it. It is, the only one in the segment with a 6-speed manual, which I value. I think it is a very nice balance of ride quality, styling, handling. I think it's plenty quick. I like having power that you have to work for. Not everyone feels that way. Some people want an excess of power all the time. I'm not one of them. I think it's more fun, given where I live in the land of traffic. So I think this is a very nicely balanced car, and really, really have enjoyed driving it around. All right, that is it for this review of the 2023 Acura Integra A-Spec with technology package and 6-speed manual. Thank you so much for coming along, whether you agree with my opinions on this car or not. We so appreciate all the support. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe right here on YouTube if you like this video or the channel in general. You can also give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Out Motorsports for more shenanigans that aren't put on YouTube. And if you'd like to join a community of LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors, both online and in person, we've got some events and an online community, and we would love to get to know you there. Head over to outmotorsports.com and sign up, and we'll see you over there. Till next time, please stay safe, be well, see you again soon.